Welcome to the Play Their Way podcast, where we talk about all things in child-first coaching. I'm your host, Laura Jane Jones, and today we're joined by Paul Jenkins, the founder and CEO of the organisation League Leaders. And I'm delighted to say that Adbul and Lereece from the programme are also here too. Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
This is the biggest podcast we've done so far, all four of us tucked around the table. So I'm hoping that we have some nice chats today. Up for it?
Yeah, look forward to being here. Look forward to chatting, yeah.
Good, just making sure everyone's mics were working there. So, Paul, let's dive right in. Tell me a little bit about what League Leaders is and does.
Yeah, so we are a charity that ultimately is giving every young person the right to design how they're physically active. So what we do is we help young people who are disengaged with physical activity in sport, and we combine the power of youth co-creation and creativity to help young people across the UK to engage in sport, to learn life skills, to develop and deliver real world projects centered around helping other young people to be active, and kind of closing the loop by creating employment opportunities, not only in the sports sector, but all those other associated sectors that influence how a young person may get involved within that space. So media, health, tech, fashion, you name it. But our vision, our North Star, whatever you want to call it, is all about giving every young person that agency to figure out and design their own solutions to their own barriers. In a nutshell, that's what League Leaders is.
It's all a bit of a snore elevator pitch, I think, Adbul and Lereece. So maybe you can fill me in from your perspective. You're wearing hoodies.
It's all a bit elevator.
Yeah, well, I just think from the perspective that we've got two young people who can break it down for us to see what it actually means to you. What does what does League Leaders mean to you?
So for me, League Leaders is, since I joined, I would say this time last year, maybe a little bit earlier, but I joined League Leaders based on what I knew of it beforehand. And League Leaders is, and I'm part of the what's called the Coach's Corner, which is like a youth board where we sort of give our voices and our thoughts on where League Leaders should go in terms of the direction it goes. And it's given me a bit of a chance for me to actually get involved with that sort of thing, in actually like getting involved with people that may create policies or may create that type of thing, where that was quite tough for me to get involved in beforehand. So obviously Paul's efforts and everyone else at League Leaders' efforts, where we get to do that, and we get to do cool stuff like this, where we get to speak. We have a platform to speak, and we get to go to workshops and help out with workshops and help out with other things that we can do to support League Leaders and what it's trying to do. That's something that helps me a lot. So I can only speak for myself, and that's obviously that's what my experience and what I think League Leaders is about. So it gave me the opportunity to give others and hopefully create the change that I want to create. So for me, that's what it is.
Lereece, what's your participation in League Leaders look like?
So my experience is a little bit different from Adbul, because I joined not long ago, this year, but I didn't know about League Leaders beforehand, so it was really like engaging to like go around and do some research myself. And before coming in, what I knew of it was that like it gives young people a voice to speak and like to give us a chance to change what we already know about physical sport. And I feel like not a lot of people speak about physical sport nowadays. So I feel like for me, someone who isn't very confident, it helps me to speak out and be confident, but also gives young people an opportunity to speak out and be confident as well. So especially like in situations like this where I would have never thought to speak on a podcast, etc., it kind of gives other people the hope as well to be able to do this. So yeah, I think the League Leaders has just given me a new perception on physical sport, new perception on myself, and then a new perception on young people as well as a whole.
Paul, there's obviously no disrespect on your snore elevator pitch, but it's so nice to hear from these two about what League Leaders means to them. But what I'm intrigued by is what was the driving factor for you to create this charity, this organisation?
Sure, no, I appreciate no one's ever said snore elevator pitch. I love it. No, seriously, that's what it's all about. It's I guess just Lereece and Abdul will say it in their own way, but they'll always be able to communicate it better. So that's why they should be here today. So where this all started from goes back to when I was a child myself, specifically between the ages of 13 and 16. Basically, I had the same issues, which I didn't know it was called legalese, but I basically had the same issues to be active as a young man, teenager. Whilst I was dealing with sort of other kind of turbulent things in my life, sport was my chance to kind of survive that and deal with those situations. And at school, I basically was told you have to do either hockey, football, or the worst of all, rugby. No.
How dare you?
I know. So we work across all sports, don't worry. But basketball was my particular sport, and basketball sneakers and mud and cold weather don't go well together. We like to be in a nice warm indoor gym. And so kind of the sort of the PE teacher sort of just said, okay, if you're not going to engage, we're going to leave you to the side. We'll put you into detention. We'll just leave you. It's your fault. It's either you choose it or not. And I'm like, well, what's that about? I've got these ideas. We've got basketball nets in the school. Why can't we bring basketball into the curriculum? And then on the flip side, in terms of that kind of creativity, design piece, I was in a careers advisor meeting, and I'm like, I want to leave school. I don't want to do A levels. I want to get into the creative industries, and I want to use design as a way to help young people to be active. Paul, you're going to fail if you do that. Like, that was what their response was. And I'm like, this is the language I'm getting outside of school in my situations, and no one's listening to me. No one's kind of nurturing those ideas. So kind of that plants the seed for what is now League Leaders. And so, yeah, I'm that sort of annoying founder. That's kind of, for me, it's not saying I've seen it. It's not about a gap in the market. Someone has said that to me once, which is awful. But it's about, for me, it's a mission, it's a purpose. And if I'm not going to do it, and we're not going to do it, who's going to do it? And that's kind of where we've come from, basically. So we're a new charity at this stage, but we have a lot of expertise. The two to my right being the main experts here today, to basically make this happen. So yeah, it's weird to track back, because I can think of like my haircut when I was 13 and all of that, and just those experiences. But I'd like to go back to that school and those teachers and say, look, in a way, you technically helped to create what you've created, but we should improve it moving forward. So,
how much do you think the way that we're seeing changes to sports coaching and the development of young people through sport is a reaction to perhaps outdated practices of school sports and school curriculum sports when we were growing up and through the kind of 80s, 90s and early noughties?
I mean, for me, from what I hear from speaking with schools or youth groups or working with those coaches, those people delivering this work, I don't think, in terms of kind of from a coach's perspective to young people, too much has changed. And what I mean by that is kind of their support that they're provided to actually go, do you know what, we're given a 60-minute slot for a lesson, but for 10 minutes of this, we're going to talk about how did those young people find the session, what would they do next time? Because I think the quota that they're given is like, you've got to do 60 minutes end-to-end activity, and that's it. And you might get a young person, saying to, a parent or guardian, hey, I didn't do 60 minutes of sport, and then it kind of comes down on the coaches. That's my personal opinion on sort of what's changed, or what hasn't changed. I think what has changed, though, is I think there's a willingness to try to get better. So the kind of the coaches we work with and the work that we're delivering and what I hear from the kind of the wider sector, there is this need to actually recognition of we need to put young people first, but we have this gap of like, how do we go about doing it? It's this big scary thing of working with you two, but actually reality is like, we're just all humans, and this is the gap that we fill as a charity, because we're bringing that connection. So I'd say, yeah, I think things have changed from a kind of a mindset of those coaches, but I think from what I see, kind of the support, there'll be somebody watching this who will completely disagree with me, and I guess I'm just talking through my experience. But I think knowing that there is that want to change, I think that's a really positive thing. So I think it's now about, you know, moving on and trying to do something about that.
How much has the concept of play their way spoken to you then?
So I think for me, if we look at also kind of like the organisations behind it, some of which we know, some of which we don't know, some of which we're working with, and a bunch of people said, like, league leaders, you've got to get in touch with Play Their Way, like, because you just need to, like, you need to be kind of connecting these people. So I think from my impression of what this, call it a campaign, call it work, call it, it's the start, let's face it, it's the start of a journey of you know, these organisations, this campaign. I think what I'm a big fan of is the fact it's kind of flying a flag about advocacy and kind of influencing, because that needs to go hand in hand with that sort of on the ground delivery. So I think I'm excited to see how it can join up that kind of influencing bit, which is my sort of current interpretation of it, and how it can kind of connect to those kind of on the ground coaching. So, and those two things, you need those two things to kind of really create change. So I think, you know, it's got a lot of people and support behind it, you know, the effort going into the podcast, you know, having us here today, you know, it's not small fry. I'm interested to see like how it's going to kind of grow and progress, and that kind of what piqued our interest in coming here today.
Adbul and Lereece, Play Their Way is about voice, choice and journey. So as young people, what does that mean to you, do you think?
Yeah, so in terms of like voice, I think young people as a whole don't really have a voice nowadays. But I think there is like definitely a movement towards like realising that and giving young people a voice in charities like league leaders, etc. And then voice. Choice. I feel like choice is really interesting because, for example, like when I think of choice, I think of like back in primary school where I would, like where PE would be compulsory. Like you have to do PE in secondary school as well. And I feel like adding that compulsory aspect of it kind of brings people away from it in a very, it's very ironic, but like we're not given a choice to do what we are comfortable with. There's very much a curriculum around it, and I think it just adds like rigid. It's just very rigid and doesn't give space to enjoy it. And like for example, sports day, it was always a thing of, oh yeah, like we've got to win, like, you know, like rather than, oh my god, like let's go out, enjoy it, like let's go have fun. And me, for example, I really do enjoy running, but like I can never remember a time where I would go and actually like have fun rather than thinking, oh my god, I'm gonna fall or something like that. So I think that would be choice in terms of like being able to choose what you want to do within sports, even if like the curriculum does involve PE. I feel like what does PE look like for everyone? What does everyone want to do, kind of thing. And then journey, I feel like physical sports should be part of your journey. I feel like everybody needs it, and you know, it helps you grow in many different ways. So I think when I think of journey, I think of growth equals physical sports, and physical sports equals growth.
When you think about journey and you say that physical sport is important, do you think that there's a lot of young people who give up on sports when they're young, who then won't want to be active as adults because of being put off of it when they're younger?
Definitely. I feel like in my secondary school, like I think that even happened to me personally, because I really do enjoy physical sport. And like as I said, I did running. I was really interested in like jumping, for example, like long jump. But I don't know. I guess the seriousness of it, the competitiveness of it, just like made my love for it fizzle out. And I wasn't able to actually flourish in what I'm actually good at. So I think when I did see league leaders, I was like, oh wow, somewhere that actually is interested in sport and gives a voice to young people, because I feel like I have a lot to say about that. So yeah, I do think that physical sport, like it just, yeah.
Abdul, those things that Lereece is talking about there, can you relate to that?
Yeah, in terms of with voice probably especially, because a lot of the time, sort of the big boy decisions are made in governing bodies and in other sort of really big stakeholders of the young person's life. That's being done by obviously the actual older people, you should say, and there isn't much consideration for the actual young person's desires, interests, and needs. I think it's and there is a sort of a reluctancy to give that a little bit. I wouldn't say it hasn't changed and improved, because I think it has, but I think there is an element of like tokenism to that, where young people are given maybe something that they do for free. You do it for free over a period of time, and that's that. And even though you're over 16, you're eligible to work and you've put effort in, you've been proactive, but there isn't the same. It doesn't even come down to pay. It comes down to value of responsibility, value of the individual, where they're considered, okay, because they're young, we can get away with not paying them as much as we would for someone who's 18, 19, 20. So having those young, if those young people's voices were to be heard, and in those big rooms where decisions are made about young people, then there has to be a deep understanding of the young people. That's what I think, and so voice change, right? Change and journey. So obviously I've already mentioned about the change. In order for that to happen, those voices need to be heard, but the journey as well, I think, needs to be appreciated, where sort of for young people especially, and because they're young, I work with a lot of young people myself, where I work with sort of teenagers and young teenagers, so 14 to 18 years old. Sometimes I work with younger as well, and the common theme I find is that I always ask them their definitions of success and what they look at as success, and what they desire. And more often than not, it's something material. It's something, they want houses or cars, or they want some money, or they want to. Very rarely you find that they want to actually create change or do something where their actions are fizzling down to their community as well. And if young people are involved more at a younger age, obviously it's quite daunting maybe for a young person, but if there's platforms like this where young people are given the opportunity to come and speak, to be guided into that sort of thing, to be guided into policy making a lot more, you would have a lot more keen on individuals in doing that. So for me, that's quite important in terms of not underestimating what young people can say, because that's done quite a lot, where that young person might have an idea better than yours and it's more relevant to young people, and you're working with young people, but you're not actually giving them that chance to step up and not necessarily take full reins, but give them the chance to do as much as they can and gain that fruitful experience and value experience. So yeah.
One of the things we talk a lot about on this podcast is self-autonomy, and it sounds like through League Leaders you especially have been given that tool and been given the ability to have that self-autonomy. How important has that been to you, and how much confidence has that given you to feel like a decision maker in this space?
No, for me, self-autonomy I've learned over the years that it's something that's really, really important. To be given sort of the freedom to say, you've got good ideas, you've got good ways of thinking, let's feed into that, and let's try and create something that can support and benefit the wider community, the wider young people. So definitely for me, that's quite important, and Obviously with league leaders, it's again these types of things, these types of opportunities where we get to have a sit down and actually speak our part and say what young people would think, what young people would like, what young people would want to get into within sport. And obviously for us, like I said, for us to create change and feed into that, there needs to be that opportunity and that gateway for us to have that sort of thing. So yeah, like league leaders has helped me do that quite a lot, and sort of through the efforts of league leaders, we get to have these sit downs where we can sit down and speak about stuff like youth voice and youth change. So yeah.
Lereece, how much do you feel like you've been given a voice by league leaders?
I feel like I've already worked with a group of young people, and it was just really like it was a very new experience in terms of like speaking to young people about something that you find important but they don't know the importance of it yet, if that makes sense. And I feel like it builds confidence not only in like spaces where you can speak to young people, but in every aspect, because you get to have that feel of like that what you're saying is valid, and what you're saying is of real value. So yeah.
Paul, how nice is it for you to hear what they're saying here today about the experiences they've had with league leaders? How much does that speak to what your ambitions for the charity were from the outset?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously it's amazing. It's amazing to hear, but also at the same time, and I'm not talking in an entity of what we do as a charity. It doesn't surprise me that this is your reaction once you've had, take out league leaders, like those kinds of opportunities. That doesn't surprise me, and actually, I'm just sitting here listening to this and just like you can explain it much better than I ever can, than a lot of people can, and how you talk about it in a very eloquent way. But also, what I also pick up from just how you speak about it as well is that, and it shows that we've got work to do as a group, that there's still so much more to do. So yeah, no, it's super inspiring to do it. I mean, anybody who's working with young people, and Abdul doing it, Lereece has done it as well. You've both done some already through your involvement with Coach's Corner, but you get so much energy from it. I have full respect to the full-time teachers, because just their energy that they do to do it day in, day out. And we're not in front of young people day in, day out. We're behind the scenes in front of young people, delivery, advocacy, all of this. But yeah, when you give young people the opportunities, like this is what they're saying, like what you were saying, like giving them like recognition or time. I can't remember how you worded it, Abdul, but
Can't remember how I worded it.
You're basically just saying like just giving that recognition or that time to do it. I mean, being invited to come on here to hear that, I think somebody, hopefully if they just listen to like 2 minutes of this, just listen to that, and that's what it is. So no, it's very cool. Like it's like, but I also know we're on our journey as well to do it, and we need your help to basically, for the young person that we haven't met yet, that's what they need help for. So I've probably rambled quite a lot there.
No,
but
absolutely fine. When you talked about the conception of this and your why, we kind of touched on that autonomy and the lack thereof that you had as a youngster. But how much do you think there's been an absence of play in youth sports settings, and how much is that a central part of what League Leaders is about?
Yeah, I mean, the word play is such a great way, because to me it kind of, you were saying as well, like it's about just the enjoyment, and the enjoyment, I guess, let's take out the word sport, let's take out the word physical activity, it's just the enjoyment of moving. And like I feel like young people understand the value of moving and all the stuff you can get from it, but I think there's a whole bunch of barriers, and I think possibly the idea of like competition versus play is one of those barriers. Now I really enjoy in like my own personal sports centers, and as a kid as well, I enjoy that competitive element for sure, but I also enjoy those moments where you've just got those play moments. And I think there is, to Lereece's point, you really enjoy running, but there's this like, it's got to be like a competitive running. But like, what if you just enjoy running? What if you just nurture that and allow that to happen? I think we all, as sectors, as organisations, like that can't be forgotten, because if you become a professional athlete, your career, it's a short career, right? You have to enjoy it. And you have to be playful within it. And if you don't, like, you'll get to, you might get injured, or you'll get to the end of your, elite level, and you'll be like, I didn't enjoy that. So I think we need to be doing much, much more to just, get involved, enjoy it. And then if you really enjoy it, maybe we put you down that competition path or that sort of talent pathway. And, young people that we're working with, some are like, I want to make the Olympics next year. This is my pathway. And that's great. And some are like, actually, I'm happy going, like, just kind of being confident to get out of the house and walk around my street. And if you can put those two things together and they're supporting each other, they both get stuff from each other. So yeah, I think play is massive. I think we can't underestimate it.
Yeah, I mean, I think linking to that, like a lot of the time, obviously there was the distinction of like playing for the fun and playing for competition. I think that for me personally, the way I would love to see it is that the two are almost in separate environments, where the community football and the fun football is made for fun football, and there is a greater reason for why that's happening, just as much as how within competitive football there needs to be a greater reason for why that's happening. Because a lot of the time, even within competitive football or within community football, you're bound to get, I would say, the bad with the good type thing, where within competitive football, it's much easier to create a toxic environment, just because the expectation, the results required, because so much is on the line. And then similarly with community football, it's more, or I'm saying football by the way, because I've coached most of our time in football, but within sport generally, within community sport, there's sort of there comes where you're working with disadvantaged backgrounds, people of low socioeconomic backgrounds, people with who are at risk of youth violence or at risk of drug consumption and so on. So that has its own field of troubles, and that has its own field of troubles. It's how does that community sport provision play into the wider lens of what we're trying to aim for and what we're trying to do? And is what we're trying to aim for, is there a constant link within that? Or, one thing I notice is that a lot of the community football sessions are provided just for the sake of it. And coaches and all stakeholders, they don't internalize the reason why they're going to play. And the coaches may misinterpret that and say, oh, we're doing sessions in the community to make the best teams within the community and to try and get them to competitive football. Or it's knowing the purpose for each little thing, and letting that play into it. And at times that's a little bit blurred.
Do you think there should be a bigger onus on play in those environments then?
I think that there definitely should be play in the environments where play needs to be. And I think competition is healthy if it's directed in and managed in the right way as well. And I think competition builds characteristics that sometimes play doesn't, and play does the same invertedly, where play will build characteristics that are much harder to do in a competitive environment. So there is an element of hard and soft, of strong and soft type environment, where there needs to be a balance struck. And so while play is really, really important, there is also, so long as there's a great opportunity for them to go into competitive sport if they want to, then that would be great as well. But the onus maybe on community sport is given a little bit less, just because it's so much easier to take an interest in competitive sport. If you're a fan of football, you want to be a footballer. If you're a fan of football, you want to be a coach, you want to be an analyst, you want to be wherever you want to be. So so how do we separate the two? How do we make young people more aware that while it's really good that you want to become a footballer, you want to become a coach, that's really great. Okay, is there, are you understanding where play has a part to it and where competition has a part to play?
Do you think they have to be silos? Do you think they have to operate separately though? Do you think that play can exist in all of these environments, and that perhaps is the important thing?
Yeah, I think play can be like a constant theme, where even in the competitive environments you need to have an element of play, but even in the play environments there needs to be a small element of competition, or a healthy competition. It's not necessary, I think, in a play environment if you're just there to create games and let people enjoy and have fun, if that is what the reason for that play environment is. But there has to be a defined, clear reason for each environment, each session that happens, each even if the purpose and is if it's clear and defined, then just play into that. And sometimes competition may support that, maybe it won't. That's up to sort of the coaches and the team and the people in that environment to deal with, to sort of break that apart and see which is which. But for me, it's if there are characteristics that are really beneficial from a competitive environment, So I think competition is healthy, but I think play is a constant theme throughout, regardless of, because you see, like I see, training videos of players and stuff like that, and they come in on there having a laugh, they're joking around. That's why they got involved in football in the first place. If you take that away now, it's going to sort of create a daunting and toxic environment for them where they're having to drag themselves along every day. So there needs to be a balance struck where strong characteristics of resilience, of resilience and internal strength mixed with open-heartedness, open play. There needs to be a balance struck between the two, and it's about managing where play fits in, where competition fits in, and clearly defining why and which in each environment. That for me, that's one thing I've noticed in the environments that I've been in. The more clear environments, people love competition even if they're not great in the sport, or people, so long as the right environment's created, people would love the competition even if sometimes they know they're not great in the sport and people may have an outlook on them, but they're there because they love the competition. They love winning and losing. They love the feeling of winning when they win, and obviously they may not like the feeling of losing, but they like that environment where there is something to play for. And people like environments where I'm just here to do skills and try out different things and speak to people, and so it's all in its respective environments in my eyes. And so long as that's clear, that's really good. And I really like the campaign because it really supports that. So,
Lereece, do you agree? Do you agree that competition is universal, or do you think there are young people out there who don't enjoy competition and might be alienated from participation because competition exists?
Yeah, I feel like play is like a big thing. I feel like, for example, me, when I was younger, as I said, I liked to run, but I realised very quickly that maybe competition wasn't the best place for me. But then when that is the case, where do you go? Like, where do you go to just play, or where do you go to just like want to enjoy it? I feel like there's not enough of a community that actually encapsulates the idea. Whereas if you want to do sport like competitively, there's definitely a place for you to go. But I actually have seen like a little bit of a change. Like while I'm at university, there's very much a big enjoyment in sport, not necessarily having to do it just to compete. I'm very much interested in like trying to get into netball and things like that, but again, not competitively, just to learn the sport. And I think there's a very big movement, like come along and you can play netball if you want to. You don't have to have experience, you can just come along and play. which I don't think was there back when I was younger. So I feel like there's definitely a movement, and it's definitely important, especially if your physical movement is a way for you to like relieve mental health stresses and stuff like that. It's probably not the best idea to mix competition with it, because it just adds on another whole big thing. So yeah,
it's really interesting when you talk about university sport and getting involved in things and it not necessarily being about competition. It reminds me of when I was in university, and I don't think I've really thought about this in the context of Play Their Way, that you do go and join up to sports clubs, whether you've ever played that sport before, whether you've got an interest, because you're joining up with friends, because it's about joining a club and being a part of something as opposed to competing in something. And I think what's interesting there is, if we look at it, it's self-advocacy and it's self-determination in a group of young people, a little bit older than the kind of people that Play Their Way might be targeting. But how much have you seen that when you put the onus on the young people to self-organise through league leaders, that play and kinship and friendship comes to the fore?
I mean, the short answer is every time. to put it as simply as that. Depends on, I guess, like what the thing we're doing or the situation. Because I was going to ask you as well, like just as Abdul was talking, just as a complete side note, you're asking the question. Did you ever have a moment in that kind of running experience where, I don't know, the coach or the teacher, whoever, kind of just had a sort of, let's call it, I want to use the word silly versus play, but like had that kind of moment of like, we're working really hard, but actually like, let's let off steam and do it all like this? Because it reminded me of a few experiences I had as a kid. I just remember the serious, not the serious coach, an amazing coach, my amazing basketball coach. But then when he would play with us in like the end of the scrimmage, and he would just kind of go into this like, right, let's call it playful mode, this just release mode, and it kind of like, it brought us all closer together. And he just was taking awful shots. I just wondered, like, did you have that? And I can maybe come back to your question. I just wanted to know that, and you can.
Yeah,
if you didn't, yeah.
I definitely think so. I mean, if it did happen, I probably didn't notice as much, because I'm just so much in the, like, I've been raised to be competitive, so that's what I'm in. Like, my brain is in, oh, I've lost, so there's nothing to celebrate. Do you know? Whereas, and I feel like that bit of belonging is really important in a space like that, because when you're in a team, even if you don't win, it's that friend that comes up to you and like, oh, well done though, like I really like the way that you did that, or like, just building that confidence. So I feel like, no, not necessarily, but I think it would have been emphasised if I had that sense of belonging and making sure that I feel part of that team, rather than just running for the sake of it or doing it. Like, yeah.
What I think is interesting though is what you're talking about is where, and I can certainly relate to this from when I was in school, is play being the rewarding sessions as opposed to a central theme, and how you would get through 50 minutes for that last 10 minutes, where perhaps we should be incorporating that throughout. I mean, our last guest, Nikki, talked about how they start their sessions with play, because that's the note they start a session on, and it's their takeoff point from there. And from that point onwards, even when they're doing skills and drills and things that will improve their cycling in that case, it still feels like fun because they've started at that point, as opposed to it being the reward for performance. Yeah,
I mean, like all the, just going off what Abdul's saying here as well, and I guess like the work we're doing, like I wouldn't say it's at the start, I wouldn't say it's the end. We try to keep it as it's a cultural thing. So if I'm just thinking back to some of the work we've all done together, I think what we've tried to do is set up those rooms or whatever those environments are to say, like, today is about you being yourself. It's an opportunity for you to be yourself, and with that comes kind of almost risk and reward. So be yourself. There's lots of different people from different backgrounds and different abilities, so help each other out, but kind of really use this opportunity, because we this is maybe what you tell us, is that you're in those competitive environments, there's environments you don't want to be in, so you may as well make the most of this. And it could just be little things like, icebreakers. It could be sort of like, we've done an activity and then we sort of like pause and we talk. everybody kind of presents, everybody communicates, everybody gives and receives feedback, and it basically just, again, I mean, the simplified way of saying it is when I'm working with a young person and they're like almost like, Paul, you don't want to know what I think. Like, and the way I sort of interpret that is like, okay, somebody else in your journey has let you down, and I can relate to that as well. And I'm like, no, I really want to know what you think. Let's talk about it. And then they have like a small panic because they'll be like, uh-oh, this is serious. I've actually got this opportunity. And like, okay, you're right. Panic in a good way, and just it's just creating those little interactions where they can just feel. I know we're using the word play, but I just want to like the joy of it. They can be themselves, and I mean, we're a charity helping young people. Like, we need to have playfulness within that, because if we don't have that, we need to stop. So I think you give the onus to young people and create that environment that Abdul's talking about, but all those little situations as well. You know, we're not going to do any sport for 5 minutes. We're going to basically use this time for whatever you want to do. Like reflection, but rather than going like, what did you achieve the most there, it's more like, did you enjoy this, and if you didn't, or how could we make it more fun, or wild card, like, we're not using equipment today, what are we going to do, all of those kinds of things.
What are your hopes, dreams and aspirations for League Leaders over the next 5 years of your journey, 10 years of your journey?
That's a big question.
I know it is.
Hope dreams, desires. Well, I'll go back to the snore elevator pitch.
Go on.
Go back to that snore elevator pitch.
Up to the penthouse now.
I don't ever want to be in a penthouse. I mean, I think for us, like, in 5 years, what I said in the snore elevator pitch about giving every young person that right, we will be somewhere along that journey of actioning that and making it happen. I think we're already doing that, but we're obviously doing it on a certain scale, in a certain capacity. So as long as we're on that journey, I think where we end up, I would say that, like, right now, kind of, having the two of you here, to me, like, maybe dream is the right word, maybe it's the wrong word, but like, if this is not like what we should be doing, like having you two here speak and talk about these things, then I think we're already doing it, I think. But I mean, sure, like, I'm not going to sit here and go, the number one charity for young people, like, it's about collaboration, working together. But maybe a little time to think about it. I think, so for instance, when we're speaking in 5 years, if we're speaking in 5 years, I'd say that's probably a good indication of like the dreams I've got for League Leaders, to make sure that we're, because we're supporting you and all those other young people, like, because we're working 11 to 25. So like, we will potentially be working with someone for 14, 15, I never did well at maths, of their life, right? So 5 years is a third of that. I don't know if I answered your question. Abdul can probably answer it better.
I think it's quite good when you don't have an answer to that question. I guess the sky's the limit for League Leaders, and it certainly sounds like it is for you two. So thanks all three of you for coming in today. It's been a fantastic chat, and it's been so nice to have nice young people on the show. Thank you for listening, and we hope you've enjoyed. Be sure to leave us a review and share this with someone else who you think might like it too. Check out our website, www.playtheirway.org, and follow Play Their Way on social media at Play Their Way on TikTok, X and LinkedIn, and at Play Their Way UK on Facebook and Instagram.